Hello, my name's Caroline Jane Knight. I'm the fifth great niece of Jane Austen and the last of her descendants to have grown up at Chawton House. I'm now founder and chair of the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Sheila Walker, who is the winner of the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation Writing Competition of 2022. Welcome, Sheila. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Caroline. Happy to be here.
Now, obviously, we first actually met for the first time, or spoke for the first time, actually, when I had the pleasure of contacting you to say that you'd been selected as a finalist.
Correct.
Which obviously, so before we get on to the competition, though, and your wonderful story, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, my name is Sheila, of course, and I was born and raised in Ireland, in Dublin, the capital, in the suburb out by the sea. And after school, I went on to London, as many young people did in those days, and then traveled around Europe a while, did some voluntary work and stuff, and eventually ended up working in the travel and tourism industry. And I worked for many years for the Irish Tourist Board in their London office, which was a fantastic time to be in London and a great job to be in, to be paid to do what I would have done for nothing, to talk about Ireland. It was great. And then eventually I went on to university in London, did a degree, humanities degree, specializing in English literature. And then went on to have my kids. And then we moved to Germany, which is how the story kind of started. But so we moved to Germany when the kids were so very small, 2 girls. And we did intend to go back to the UK. We had a house there. But life was good here in the south of Germany, especially with kids. And so we stayed, and the children went off to university. So they're gone, and we're still here.
And what took you to Germany?
My husband's job,
right.
In the computer industry, and he was headhunted. And he was asked which happens a lot, I suppose, he was asked by the headhunter, would he be interested in a job in Germany? And my husband said, well, if it's in Heidelberg, I might. And the recruiter came back and said, actually, it is in Heidelberg.
Oh, there you go.
So it was like fate,
yeah.
So that's how we ended up in Heidelberg, which, of course, is a lovely place to live, really.
Yes, very good. And I'm in Melbourne, as you know, and there's actually Heidelberg, not far from me at all. There's a suburb called Heidelberg.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes, there is. Yes, very close to me. But very nice area it is as well. Very nice. So having studied, obviously, literature, have you been writing for a long time? Is that a long-held sort of ambition?
Yes, but not enough. And nothing published, never been brave enough to put it out there, really, just, like many people, scribblings and stuff, dabbled in bits of poetry and bits of prose, and I have an idea for a play, but not really until this time. I entered a couple of small short story competitions over the last couple of years, but this was the first one I really put my mind to. The reason being, my sister, who lives in California, said to me, this is something you might be interested in. It's called the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation. And she said she knew some people who were involved in perhaps the American part of that. I'm not sure, but there's an American division or an American society. And I thought, oh, that sounds like something for me. And so I started reading all the stuff about Pride and Possibilities and everything. And then one day up pops the writing competition. And I thought, oh, I think I might like to do that. And then I saw that the title was inspired by Jane Austen. And it came to me then immediately what I was going to write.
And I have to say, do you know something I do find in life, don't you, that the things that I have found, that you get those moments where things just happen instantly, don't they? And for me, it was actually, one of those moments for me was actually the decision to start the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation.
Great.
The idea that it happened in 5 minutes. And it was and it was absolutely right. And for you, this has been an absolutely good decision. So why now though? I mean, there's obviously lots of other writing competitions and short story writing competitions you would have seen.
Yeah, Yes, you're right. But I don't know, it just sparked something in me. And it immediately when I saw the title, inspired by Jane Austen, I thought it just drew me right back to that moment when I and people around me here were inspired by Jane Austen. And it took me back because now we're in a house with the kids are gone, and you start to reflect on when we came to Germany and why we came to Germany and how it was in the beginning. That it all sounds lovely to move to a pretty Heidelberg, but it's a challenge to move anywhere, to uproot yourself and your children, your husband and your wife and your children, whatever, and move somewhere new. It's not a holiday. You have to work at it. And there were times when it was quite lonely, and you had to try to make friends, and you had to find friends for your kids. And when the title inspired by Jane Austen, as I keep saying, just triggered that memory of the boxed set, which is my story, which is about the BBC 1995 production of Pride and Prejudice, which was a significant moment in those early years when we were first here in Germany.
Right. So the box set actually for you was a significant piece of work.
Yes, absolutely. Because that, for me, it is the only box set that really mattered back in 1995, 6, whatever, for us was Pride and Prejudice. I can still hear the music, the opening music. I can still hear it in my head, the piano. It's still there.
And of course, it is absolutely one of the most significant, I mean, for many people, and commercially, for in Jane Austen's career, if you want to put it like that, I think it's one of the most significant. Yes. One of the most significant productions, isn't it? I mean, it absolutely brought
it is absolutely
the modern.
I saw that you. I'm sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, you go. You go.
I saw that you did a recent YouTube video with the Austen Book Break podcast that you did, and you talked about, made me laugh. You talked about the kind of before and after Colin Firth.
Yes.
And I thought, oh yes, I'm one of those. Actually, I fall into the post Colin Firth category.
Absolutely. Because yes, I talk about the fact that, of course, yes, when we lived at Chawton House, it was pre-Colin Firth, which just means, obviously Jane Austen was incredibly popular and we had thousands of visitors every year, but a very different crowd to get now. Or something now actually has a lot more fans, should we say?
Probably even a different group of a fresh eye, perhaps, on Jane Austen, which is nice. They have not just academics and people studying English literature, but a much broader reach. Which that's what the video did, absolutely. And it did it for us.
Absolutely,
and for us it was very special.
And every subsequent sort of production, I think, does. I mean, I think obviously, there's always a lot of controversy about what's, what people like and what people don't. But I always think that everything appeals to somebody, doesn't it? And every iteration is taking Jane's work to somebody new, and appealing to more people. As you say, she's got a much broader reach now than before.
Yeah, but it's nice. I mean, when you get everyone's interpretation, a different nuance. Somebody sees something a little differently and focuses on that in a video or a film production or a TV production. And so it's always nice to have fresh eyes on a classic text.
Yeah, absolutely. So your story, so for the box set was obviously that, very important to you at a moment in your life where you were, just trying to settle in somewhere new. But your story, the box set, is actually telling the story from a gentleman's point of view. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, that came to me almost immediately because although the story is fiction, but the truth of the fact of it is set in that time of our lives, 1995, 96, our early days here, when there was no digital access. We were dependent on borrowing books and borrowing videos from our circle of English-speaking friends, and then when I realized that one of the people in that group used to talk a lot about Mr. Bennet, and we all did in a way. It wasn't just all about and Mr. Darcy. And then this character came to me, loosely based, I have to say. It's not a biography or anything, loosely based on one of the people in our circle back in those days, who was a man who did love reading and did love his library and did consume books, and there were always deliveries of books coming to his house, and he was from Scotland. So that's how it started, how the character in my story evolved into the person in the story, who was called John.
Yes. And in your story, which of course will allow people to listen for themselves, they can hear that on our YouTube channel. But in the story, one of the things I love about it most is it's one of those stories that just draws you right into just a moment in time. It's a small moment in time, but you just do such a good job of just drawing us just into that moment. How did you go about writing the story?
I'm very pleased for you that you said that, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be a kind of a cameo. I wanted it to capture just a moment. I wasn't trying to spread a big message I just wanted to capture a small moment. And the moment really for me is the connection between the two. Well, I don't want to give too much away. The connection of the two men in the bookstore for me was the point, and the moment at the end of the story when the character reveals how he feels about the book. I can't say any more unless you want to. You have to read it.
Absolutely. And something else I particularly like about it is that, obviously pre-pandemic, and it's starting again now, but pre-pandemic, I did a lot of speaking and a lot of events sort of in various places around the world. And one of the things that I've always found just so extraordinary is that reach of Jane Austen. And we all, of course, everybody thinks of, women and people either, being academics and reading the books avidly, or perhaps being sort of dress up and, preferring balls and that sort of side of thing, or both or whatever. But in actual fact, as I traveled around, as I met people, she touches so many people in so many different ways. It's not just the people you'd think it would be, if that makes sense. And there are all of these amazing connections that she creates between people. And that was one thing I was particularly attracted to in your story, is that you've captured, the fact that, as I said, these moments of connection that she provides people. And I think you've captured something that is absolutely real. I mean, I know it's a fictional story, but people really do have those moments. And that's one of the things that I think is so amazing about Jane, isn't it? Is what was so amazing is that she does connect people.
There's also that timelessness about it. I mean, people recognize, something in the characters that she wrote about and the stories that she tells, and it's outside of time. And I that's what I like about it too. And for me, that's why the character for me was the 90s. But it was about how Jane Austen, or the novel of Pride and Prejudice particularly, touched this man. And I thought that's what I wanted the story to be about. And I hoped that people would see that. I hope people saw that. I think they did.
Absolutely. Well, so clearly. So going, and this year, I mean, obviously the first year in a few years, we've been able to have Jane Austen Regency Week in Chawton and Alton in June, which is a sort of annual 9-day festival. But obviously the pandemic has put stop to that for a few years. And so we thought this year, how lovely it would be, because the timing sort of is about the time that we actually announce the winner of the writing competition, having been through various rounds of judging and got down to our final 3, who are obviously all winners, because all 3 stories are recorded by Alison Larkin, obviously for our audio book. But I have to say, I was so thrilled when we made contact and I reached out to say, congratulations, you were one of the final 3, and congratulations. But we were then going to, at the picnic, actually announce who the overall winner is. And when you said that you were going to come from Germany, because I already knew you'd won by that point. I knew by
Oh,
then
oh,
that had by the
I
time
didn't
you
know
told
that.
me, I didn't when obviously I first spoke to you because it hadn't been out to the public vote. But by the time you actually said that you were coming, we'd already had the public vote and I knew that you'd won. So I'm glad. So I obviously couldn't let anything away. But it was such a thrill to know that you were going to be there, and the other finalists as well. But it was such a thrill to know that you were going to be there. And obviously it was completely unplanned, this last bit of serendipity that just fell into place, that the lovely Susanna Harker, obviously Jane Bennett from the 95 Pride and Prejudice, from that boxed set, who is one of
I
our
know.
ambassadors, came to the picnic. And I asked her beforehand, actually before I knew which the winning story was, I'd asked her sometime before whether she would be kind enough to actually read the winning story out. And so there you were at the picnic with the chair of the judges, Jane Mackenzie, and some of our other ambassadors, and you're announced as the winner. And then Jane Bennett sits and reads your story to the whole crowd. How did that feel?
Oh, I I was overwhelmed by the whole thing. I mean, getting there was a challenge for a start because it was trains, planes, and automobiles, literally. And then meeting everybody. And I remember before I get to the actual reading of the story, I arrived in a taxi into, it must be the village of Chawton, I expect. And there were all these people standing there, all in costume. And I felt like I'd just arrived on film set. It was amazing. And then, as the day progressed, with our beautiful Regency picnic on the lawn of Chawton House, and I met all these wonderful people like Jane and Helena Kelly, and of course yourself. I only met you that day as well for the first time. And I remember thinking, this is really nice. I've been shortlisted. I'm one of three. This is great. And if I don't win, it's just fine because I'm having a great time and I'm meeting all these amazing people. And then when you announced that I had won it, I was like, oh, I was so very happy. And then I met Susanna Harker, and I knew who she was. And then you said she's going to read the story, and I was standing with my back. I was facing the group of people all sitting in their beautiful costumes and their picnics on the lawn. So I was facing them, and I had Susanna on my left reading the story, and you were on my right, and Jane was there as well. Jane Mackenzie standing also on my right. And I can remember thinking, is this happening? I have Susanna Harker, who played, Jane Bennett, reading the story. It was like, it was hard to take in. But one of the most amazing things about that moment was watching the group of people, the audience, I suppose you can call them, the guests, because I could see their faces, which was incredibly special for me because this was the first time I had heard my story out loud, because I wrote it and I heard it in my head, but I'd never heard anybody read it. But I could see people's faces reacting. And I loved that, where they, chuckled at the right parts, and especially the men, because of course it's a story about a man's, feeling about this novel, and especially about a man relating to a male character in Jane Austen's works, was a little different. And so I was looking at the men's faces, and I realized that they also recognized something. They recognized something in the character of the story, that maybe they also felt that connection with Mr. Bennett. And so it was an incredibly wonderful moment. And the Schicksal, or the serendipity of it all, was compounded by the fact that it was Father's Day in the UK that day. And there we were talking about Mr. Bennett, one of the most important fathers in her whole collection of works. So it was very special.
Absolutely. It was. I have to say, I think for all of us, that was. Yes, that was a moment none of us will ever forget. I think it was an incredibly, incredibly special moment. And as you said, the experience of actually hearing your work read back to you is, I mean, I had the absolute pleasure of, I remember the first time that I heard Alison Larkin, who is, multi-award winning Austen narrator. She's, absolutely the pinnacle of Austen narrators. And she narrated my book. And I remember the first time I heard it absolutely absolutely took my breath away. It was incredible. And obviously the prize for our writing competition, the prize is that actually, yes, the 3 winning stories are recorded professionally as an audiobook by Alison Larkin, as I say, which we've absolutely, you know, delighted that is now released, and that obviously everybody's going to get to hear it. But what was it like for you? Because I know that you've obviously had you've had an early hearing. So what's it been like for you?
Yeah, you gave me an advance access to the master. And that's only recently. And I remember I sat down on the sofa, put it on and closed my eyes and listened. Just didn't want any distraction, just wanted to listen to it. And it was absolutely amazing, because I didn't know where she would place the stress and the nuance, and I really didn't know. And it completely came alive. It was absolutely wonderful. I listened to it several times after that, but the first time is most special. And then realizing it's all come to fruition. This is it. This is the story. This is the character. This is the moment in the story has come alive now, listening to her tell the story and realizing that I hope that other people are going to hear it and feel the same way, you know, about the character, about Mr. Bennet, about how different people respond to different characters. And, you know, it isn't all about Elizabeth Bennet. There's other characters out there, and so it is very special for me, I have to say. Quite an emotional experience, I have to say, listening to Alison read the story for the very first time for me.
Yes, yeah, I have to say I reacted exactly the same when I had that experience, which is one of the reasons why when we started the writing competition, I have to say I immediately said to Alison, please, you know, this is the prize we need, you know, because I knew that it is just so special, isn't it? It's so special to hear your work.
It is. It's wonderful to have somebody read your story and to know that it's going to reach all sorts of people that it wouldn't normally reach. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And it'll obviously now stay on our, you know, it'll stay on our YouTube channel. And so, yes, people will be listening to it for years,
including me, I have to say.
Good. So what advice, and it, you know, and isn't it extraordinary? I mean, you could have so easily thought again, oh no, I won't, you know, perhaps I won't, but you did. And it's obviously led to all of this, and now you've got a story that is forever immortalized and there for the public, as I said, beautifully narrated. So what advice, so I mean, having written a short story, if you were speaking to someone else who may next year for our competition be thinking, oh, shall I, shan't I, maybe they've never written a short story before, what advice would you give to somebody who's sitting down thinking about writing a short story for the first time?
Well, I think the first thing you have to remember is that you are limited by, you have 2,000 words maximum, which, you know, is not a lot of time to tell a story. You have to get to the point pretty quickly. Your character has to develop pretty sharpish because you don't have time. You lose it. You have to hook your reader very quickly. And to do that, you have to get to the point. You have to set the scene very fast. You have to draw your reader in quite quickly. I think it's important also to edit. That's probably the most important thing. It depends on what kind of writer you are, but obviously people, you know, write and then they go off, maybe they drift down little side alleys. But in a short story, you don't have time for that. You have to get to the point and you have to hold your reader. And if something has to happen, the story has to develop, and you're under pressure. And you have to get the balance right between telling enough, setting the scene, but not investing too many words in it. You have to get, as I said, you want to watch the word count. But I think the most important thing really has to be watching other people, because that's where your inspiration is going to come from. You observe people. The best thing of all, I would say, for advice is to take the bus, travel on the bus, the train. But on the bus is great because you can eavesdrop officially on people's conversations. And that is the most entertaining thing you can do. Bring a notebook, write down things that people say or the nuances they use or the way they connect. it's not illegal because you don't know who these people are. You're just listening to the flow of the conversation in a public place. It's enormously entertaining, and it will give you a lot of food for stories. And of course, the last thing also has to be reading. Obviously, through reading, you expand your imagination and your vocabulary. And then after that, I would say just go for it. Just do what I did. Just write it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are so grateful you did. So grateful you did. And I hope that you're going to, well, I know you are, that you're going to help us next year. You're going to be part of the final judging panel that picks next year's winners.
I'm very happy about that.
Forward to that.
Yeah, very happy.
It has been absolutely lovely talking to you, and it's been such a pleasure this year getting to know you, and obviously meeting you in Chawton, and having your wonderful story also to add to our collection. Thank you very much for contributing that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm enormously grateful to the foundation for giving me this opportunity. I'm really very happy about it. Thank you very much.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. That's what we're here for. Congratulations. Thank you very much. And as I said, we'll be seeing you again in the judging for next year's competition.
Yes, and at the Regency Week next year, I hope.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, Sheila.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Caroline. Bye-bye.